What a special evening it is. It is December the 9th, 2024. We are extremely honored to be joined by, I guess, the quasi/former co-host of the show, a man very familiar to you avid watchers of the show here at Scouching Live. Mr. Sam McGilligan is here. Sam, ready for some hot takes, ready for your input. How are you, my friend? How have you been? How has your hibernation period been? What's going on?
I am currently fantastic. I have more hair than the other co-host. Tony can, bask in this.
Right.
And, everything's been okay so far. Been taking a bit of a hiatus from hockey for those who don't know, but I'm slowly kicking back into gear and catching up.
And you're finalized on everything. You're done.
100%.
Got it.
There are names in the top 64 of, I still haven't even watched once, but I am done. Watching for the whole year. Don't need it. Not with this noggin.
Well, I mean, it's a nice Christmas present to yourself. You're like, I've done my job. I'm done. I'm ready to go. And now I can go buy my Christmas present.
Exactly. Done for the year.
Well, it's very lovely to have you back. What we're going to do today is we are just going to be chatting a little bit about what?
Oh, how about that?
It's much better.
What? Okay. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be going through Sam's work through this moment of the year. We're going to be chatting a little bit about the earliest parts of the draft class, which Sam is most familiar with.
Yes,
as well as some deeper cuts that both Sam and I have had our eyes on for a couple of years through our work at Puck Preps, because we do a lot of work over there, and there's a lot to dig into there. We might even get into who your Luke Osborne of the year is.
We ain't there yet. I don't know.
No, we're not there.
No, I don't think we're there.
No,
yet.
There's no Luke Osborne in your life right now.
Not yet.
But before we do, there's a couple of things. You buried a lead, Will. Your mustache is gone. You gotta. Somebody's already noticed before you.
Wait, is this the first stream without the mustache?
I chose a bad day to do it. I went outside after I did it to go see some friends, and I immediately felt the wind on my upper lip and went, "This was a mistake." And I feel naked, and I feel like a baby, and I feel like my head is bigger. I don't know. It's weird. I'm not used to it yet, but I think it was time for a change. I'm letting the hair grow a little. I'm entering my mid-30s technically, so I'm in my 35th year. I got to do something to keep myself fresh mentally, and I think it was time. 2 years with a mustache, struggling to grow one in the first place, and then struggling to make it look okay, I think is long enough. And we're gonna try going back to the OG look and see where it goes. I see you're growing your hair a little bit, Sam. It looks pretty solid. Looks pretty delightful.
Yeah, it wasn't supposed to get this long, but then I just stopped going to my barber, and eventually this happened, and I was like, "Oh well, look at this." I'm not really sure what to do with it in this stage. I don't know if I want to keep it because it's annoying, and
you bleach it blonde and go Johnny Bravo. That's what I would do. Bleach blonde, Johnny Bravo look. That's what I would do.
The style.
All right. The Montreal Canadiens mug. The Montreal Canadiens currently up 1-0 on the Anaheim Ducks on the Amazon Prime game of the night. Sam, before we get into the draft prospects, how do you? Oh, it's now 1-1. There we go. How are you feeling about your Montreal Canadiens to this point in the season? Because I feel like if you ask 10 different Habs fans, you're going to get multiple different reactions from different stages of grief or optimism. Where are you?
I didn't come into the season with expectations to begin with, so seeing any success from core players is a good thing for me, and that's kind of where I'm focusing on. The Slafkovsky decline is mostly tied in production. I find he's still mostly the same player to some extent. He's Slafkovsky, right? He's a puck hound. He's a monster with possession when he's on the puck. He's pretty good at those short distance passes, spinning off of guys. He's mostly who he is. And I think last year some people got a little hyped with him, but I'd like to be wrong because he's a darn pleasure when he's on his game. Suzuki's still him. Caulfield's still him. Gooley is a mauler.
Lane Hudson tied for the team lead.
I wasn't going to say it because I couldn't, like, but Lane Hudson is finally the dude, and that is the one that's got me, like, completely jazzed.
Well, he's your guy from years ago.
Yeah.
Like, from before he was a Hab, that was your guy coming into the season. You're like, this is my favorite guy, basically.
That was my guy. Before that year, I remember watching him at his D-1 and being like, yo, who is this? This guy is special. Crazy to see. Like, it's been 4 years now, and he's playing on my team on the blue line. But it's impressive. But the team's not all there yet. There's still, the depth is missing. You want to see some more high-end pieces. They've had some bad injury luck. It's a shame that the Kirby Doc trade hasn't worked out the way we all had hoped. Although, granted, one could argue that was a bit foreseeable, but, like, I wasn't on that case, so I ain't going to argue it. For the most part, it's no doom and gloom for me.
Right.
Doom and gloom with the fact that this draft pick is probably not going to be the most efficient this year. Not commenting on the management, but more so on the quality of the draft. It's not a good year to be bad.
So then, why don't we get right into that?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's been 8 minutes, and I feel like avoiding Cooley versus Slavkovsky conversation is probably high on the docket for the day, so we can get right into the 2025 NHL draft. Sam, you're getting dabbed up in the comments a little bit here, serving 2008 Modest Mouse lover vibes, which extremely true. Wait, Google Modest Mouse?
I need to see it physically.
I totally understand where.
Keep in mind, I was 12.
That's true. You were a child. I was in university. There were a lot of 2008 Modest Mouse people.
Well, look at that.
Yeah, so it's not a diss. I'll tell you that. It's a vibe. It's a vibe. But anyway, 2025 NHL draft, Sam. There's I feel like we've talked a little bit about how over the last few months this might be one of the first drafts in a few years where there might not be a consensus number one. There might not be a runaway favorite for number one, regardless of what you might see here and there. But how do you feel about, because I know where I come down, and I've been pretty public about the top group this year, but like, where do you come down? Where does that group start and end? And where do you, if you were going up there first overall this year, based on what you have seen, what's coming out of your mouth? What's the name that exits?
Okay. 5-man group at the top, all relatively equal. Hagens, Misa, Bartone, Schaefer, Eklund. Shout out to, not in that order. Shout out to Anton Frundell, who I do truly believe, based off the pre-injury tape, that he is on that level too. He's currently not playing at that level, so he's not being included. But he might not honestly be there for the rest of the year. Maybe he's just not that caliber, but still want to shout him out because he did some stuff that I don't really see anyone else in the draft do yet. Beyond that, number one, I've watched these guys through puck preps for a few years now, specifically the top two guys that I have at the top. That's going to be Michael Misa and James Hagens. I have Misa ever so slightly ahead of Hagens. I always have. This goes back to D-2 for both of these guys. I liked Misa more. Hagens was always extremely impressive. It was never, ever, ever, ever a downside to Hagens. It's just Misa's more my style of player. The fluidity and the dynamic skating. Hagens is super controlled with the puck. He's fantastic distributor. But Misa's just got that extra bit of oomph in his transitional involvement. He's still a monster around the offensive zone. Crazy gifted skater. He's just plays the type of game I'm looking for in a center ever so slightly more, right? Last year when Misa kind of was dealing with injuries, the Saginaw got stacked. It kind of flipped this back where I was like, okay, no, Hagens kind of looks better. Like, it's pretty clear to say Hagens looks better. It's Misa regressing around the time that people were like, who's first overall for 2025 made it so it was Hagens. But I don't think this was ever a consensus situation. I think most people following this class thought it was this. Seeing Misa return to form, yeah, I'm back to my original stance of Misa ever so slightly ahead of Hagens. Not enough for a point where I'm going to like stick a flag in the ground and be like, but he is the guy who I'm ever so slightly leaning. Hagens at 2 for all the incredible reasons. Easiest thing is the quality of competition, like how well he's playing against better players than all of the CHL guys. He's just a really, really good player. Super cerebral with the puck, finds those passing lanes that no one else really does. Doesn't really make mistakes, but he doesn't take over a game. I won't say ever, but not to the same extent that I've seen Misa at his peak. That's kind of like the difference maker. Porter Martone slots in at 3 because Martone, when he's at his best, takes over a game better than both of those guys do. And it's kind of scary to think about what he's going to be like in 5 years or so. Number 4, I don't know if it's Schaefer or Eklund. I think it's Schaefer, but it could be Eklund based off whichever one I watch more recent. It's a really close one. I don't see like the number 1 defender in Schaefer that some other people do. Not that I don't absolutely adore Matt Schaefer though. Like Matt Schaefer in transition is a monster. The pace that he moves the puck, brilliant. I am still trying to get a read on his defensive play, but I don't have bad things to say. I think the offensive zone creation, based on the way some people talk about him, is a little bit overblown. Not that it's not great, but it's like most of those sick highlight reel plays from Schaefer are coming off the rush and not like a cycle or like a sustained 30-second long possession where Schaefer walked the blue line and then, ran down the offensive funnel and set some guy up. Like he can do that. I've seen it, but it's not like it's a regular mainstay. It's not like a Cale Makar, like every other shift he's dominating out there and you're like, whoa, what is that guy doing? But that doesn't mean it's a bad projection. Like a high quality number 2 guy, especially in a pretty weak draft, all things considered, is an extremely valuable option. So if that's the type of thing you're going for, like I could see argument all the way up to like number 2. If you want to take him number 1, I don't even think it's ridiculous. It's not where I would be leaning. And then Eklund is just the fastest pace guy outside of, actually I'd say, out of all 4 of the previous names plus Eklund, he's the fastest paced player there is, but mostly because of just how he's playing over in Europe. The bigger surface of the ice kind of makes a bit of a difference. He's just an energizer bunny who doesn't stop. Great distribution with the puck. Just pretty much always makes the right play. He's got the skating. He's got the skill. He's not doing the things that'll wow you like the other 4 are, but he's also playing against better competition. And you could see every bit of like the top 6 role he's going to play while still seeing the star upside. So it's like, I think Eklund might be the guy to creep up into the top 3 by year's end more than anything. I don't know. It's an interesting year. You could order those 5 in almost any order and someone's going to look out of place at 5 and someone's going to have to be number 1, right? Like you can't really lose as long as you get one of those 5, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, largely I agree. I mean, we have our rankings dropping next week, so I won't spoil anything. But I mean, those are the 5 at my top 5 as well. So we're right there in lockstep, and that's hilarious because that's not unusual. I do. Like, it's so weird, right? Like, I feel like there's a lot of people talking about, oh, so-and-so is going to be first overall. So-and-so should go. So-and-so should do this. So-and-so should do that. I mean, I've spoken to a couple of people who, again, like, it's one of those things where you ask 10 people, you're going to get 10 different opinions. But it seems like Hagens is still seen as the guy here and there mostly. But like publicly, there's a lot of momentum towards Matthew Schaefer. And I mean, I've seen Schaefer a bit this year. Obviously he started the season injured. I think the fact that he's like a year younger than a Victor Eklund and a Porter Martone and a James Haggins is very interesting. And he's having an excellent season for a defenseman his age at the level that he's playing at. But I agree. I mean, I feel like a lot of his best moments are, I'm going to put the play on my back, and he doesn't have that. Like when you watch him and then you go and watch a guy like Quinn Hughes or a Cale Makar or like those guys who are those really dynamic offensive defensemen, I don't feel like he's quite there in terms of the dynamic skating ability and the quickness and the skill level. Like
Agreed.
The creativity is there, the vision is there, and like the confidence to sort of push guys back in the offensive zone a little bit and rush the net and, you know, protect the puck and do all those things is really, really good. So in my view, I think it's still early, right? It's still early-ish, but based on what I've seen of, I would say, I mean, I think the only thing I would maybe disagree is I'm a little lower on Eklund. He's still 5 for me and a strong one at that. Like I don't see him moving lower really, but like if anything, he's in a tier on his own. Like if the 4 guys I have in the top 4 go and then Eklund is there, that's the guy that I'm going with. And then after that, I don't really care. Like that's kind of where I come down on him.
That's right.
But I mean, I think it's like I've seen enough of these guys, and I'm sure you've seen enough of especially Haggins and Miso over the last couple of years where I don't care almost. Like it's like
like honestly, I don't care.
Almost, like it's almost like another draft year where having the first overall pick is like a curse. Because
all you can do is mess up.
You're gonna end up with a good player, but I feel like in 5 or 7 years, there's gonna be a situation where no matter which way you slice it, someone will look better somehow, right? Like fans of one team will present their case that Porter Martone is a better draft pick than Michael Misa, and fans of the people who draft Michael Misa are gonna make a case that he's been a better pick than a Matt Schaefer or whatever. Like I feel like it's just gonna be this like thing where all of them are kind of on the same level, because I've just seen these guys so much, and it's really fascinating because they're all different. They're like very good versions of different styles of player, which I think will be very interesting to see shake out once they get to the NHL. Like I think people are kind of poo-pooing on this draft class, and I'm sure we'll get to your thoughts on the extended class in a bit, but I think that if anything, I find this class very interesting. Like I will be very curious to see how things go in 5 years with a lot of these players, especially for me in the top 25-ish, 20-ish, where I'm kind of going, yeah, like I don't know with some of these guys, but I could see it. I could see it going really well, but I don't know. And at the top, I just kind of go, I could see them all being players, but if one in 5 years kind of pulls away as like the should have gone first overall by a country mile type, that will be very interesting to see, because at the moment I can't tell you who that is, you know, but it feels like there could be a player who, you know, like I think Michael Misa is like the ultimate complementary player. Like he's not the biggest driver of play, I don't think, but it doesn't seem to matter. Like as long as you can get him the puck and as long as you can participate in a rush with him, you're going to hit him with he's going to get scoring chances and he's going to hit you with passes if he can. But it's sorry. Yeah.
I was just going to say just quickly, like, which I feel in some ways you could argue is a play driver, just not of the conventional, like, grab the puck. Like that's kind of what I mean when I see him as a play driver. Cause I think that's the most effective of all the top 4 guys, top 5, I guess. But like, he's the most effective one at moving the puck that way.
Yeah. I mean, he's just, probably one of the most like efficient players I've seen in a really long time, where it's like I had a couple of people in the chat a few weeks ago or last week, and a couple of people while we were at the CHL Prospects Challenge, a couple of people were talking about Michael Misa maybe being a bit quieter than expected and blah, blah, blah. But I kind of went, that's his game. Like, that's just how he is. He's kind of in the background a lot of the time, but then you end up with 3 points at the end of the game. Like the name John Tavares keeps coming up in my mind over and over and over again with him, of like, you know, one-on-one, he's not going to be the most amazing looking player in the world, but he finds a way to get on the score sheet a lot. And you go, yeah, you want to have guys like that. And you don't want a team full of them, but it's good to have a few. So I kind of see him on that level. Whereas like a Schaefer, like I don't really know what NHL player he kind of reminds me of. Like maybe like a Petrangelo type guy, like a top pair, but maybe not like franchise level multi-year all-star guy, you know, like a Quinn Hughes or a Cale Makar. I don't know. It's a really interesting year though. And I don't know, like, have you, like, I think like it'll be very interesting to see how your mind changes as well from here, because I don't really know what to think. Like every week, I feel like I come up with a different reason to put these guys in a different order, and go, okay, you know, like I don't know. I just don't know.
Man.
I just don't know.
It is close.
So let's move down the board a little bit. So, you mentioned your top 5. If those 5 guys are off the board, and you have your limited sample hot take hat on right now, who's on your short list there? Maybe not a name, you know, because that's tough. But
Okay.
where does your brain go based on what you've seen so far, which I know is not everybody out there, but what are you thinking?
Okay, so not going to say Anton Friendel, because I actually couldn't make that decision, like walk on a podium and draft him based off D-1 footage that he's currently not living up to. Although I still think he's playing better than where I see him ranked for the most part. Like that's like kind of mid-first territory seems to be where he's trending. I think he's probably closer to like 10. That's semantics. Who really cares? So I won't pick him. I can't like man, it's tricky. I'm just gonna say the name that immediately came to my mind, and it's not who I would think I would want to take at 6, but like it's just out of the guys I've seen. It was Cullen Potter, because he's disgusting. And this is your point that you told me when we were just speaking alone, but as you've said in the past, like you can see the NTDP's difference now that they've lost Cullen Potter. It's made a massive difference to that team, and you can see why he is doing really well in the NCAA. Points may not be there; he ain't Boynton, but like he's playing, and he's playing good hockey. Like I said this to you, I think he's kind of in that like Gavin Brindley before the World Junior Championship in 2023 stage, where like he's adapting to NCAA play, and it's really quick, and you can see engines turning, and he's getting better and better, and the timing's making a bit more sense, the pace is making a bit more sense, and he wasn't really struggling with these things, but like the fine details are coming in, and I think there's going to be a hell of a player in the back half of the year there.
Yeah, I mean, I have him extremely high as well. I think with Cullen Potter, he's a guy who the ceiling, I think he might have one of the highest pure
that's what I'm thinking
in the draft. Like I would not be surprised if in 5 or 6 years we go, that guy went 20th. Like that guy, like he's a 2007 born playing in the NCAA in a big role for Arizona State. That's partially why he's there. Yeah. For some reason, he's still listed as a left winger on Elite Prospects, but every game I've seen him, he's playing a lot of center. So I don't know if that's like I don't know if that's a new thing for him this year. I don't remember from the NTDP last year.
Do you have his page open right now by chance?
No, I don't.
I will get that open.
But he is a guy who definitely is one of the few truly exciting players, you know, in terms of quick strike, defensive play, even here and there. You know, he gets the puck up the ice real quick. I think with him, the big thing is going to be like working as a unit. You know, if he hasn't played center a whole lot, and this is his first real experience playing big minutes doing that, I would believe it. And I feel like that's where a lot of his, like, maybe not spotting his line mates or overhandling the puck or trying to do a little too much through the center of the ice comes from. And I think people might look at that and go, well, his hockey sense isn't very good. But I look at it and go, well, I don't know. Like when you really think about it, I mean, again, I'm not saying these two players are equal, but let's say you put Logan Cooley on Arizona State University the year he was a draft eligible, right? Is he a half a point a game guy in the NCAA playing center, you know, on a pretty okay NCAA team? Maybe, you know, like I could see, and that's a player who was, you know, there were some questions about him as a center and his ability to sort of quarterback a line, and the hockey sense was a thing that people were a little concerned with.
But he's worked through it all.
but he's worked through it all. I mean, he's got he's almost a point a game this year, I believe, if you know, and he's been a very, very good part of that Utah team. And with Potter, like, and Cooley, like we talk about this all the time, going back to that draft where we're sort of going, Cooley was the most exciting player of that really high end group. And we kind of like, why wouldn't you bet on that? And so for me, I think Potter is a guy who, if he does have a stronger second half and sort of looks a little bit more like he's fitting in, and really driving good results, I mean, I could see him higher than where I have him, because the talent level is just really, really high, and I feel like there's a lot there. So it's interesting you brought him up, and like, I don't know what's up with our brainwaves, but there's a lot of things in sync.
Just for like reference, because I guess this isn't. I have no idea what Will's list looks like. I've actively avoided it all year. This is just kind of pure coincidence that's shaping up this way. So let's just keep this trend going, because who, you know, the other name that I thought of before Colin Potter, but I like Potter more, which is why I said it. But Redeem Merca.
Hey,
like 6'6".
Yeah,
like, I saw, like, he's got flaws. I ain't denying that, but like, when you're 6'6", you get to have a few more flaws if you're doing a lot of cool stuff. Like, this is not like an Anton Salai of like, he scored a lot of fluke points at the beginning of the year, and then like was just kind of okay defensively, but you saw guys like kind of run through him a bit, and you're like, aren't you supposed to be? Isn't that the whole point of you having beef, is to not like have this happen to you? So it was confusing, and I think we were both lower on him than some people were expecting. You look, contrast that to Redeem Merca. This dude's doing stuff. He's quite good with the puck, but he's not perfect yet. There's clunkiness there, but you can see when that irons out in the next few years, if it does. But I'll like to assume when right now, anyways, on my small little sample with him, that you can see the vision with him. It's not like he's some crazy offensive creator, but just good transition plays. Just good moves are in the offensive zone.
When you watched him, were you watching him with Seattle or?
I've watched both the Czech and Seattle. And my opinion,
I haven't seen him with Seattle yet, honestly.
He was, you could tell he's raw with Seattle, but like the impact was pretty notable right away. Like, guys can get through him still, but not so much like you can tell he's just dangly, like lanky and dangly.
Yeah,
like, he's trying, but like center of gravity is working against him. When he gets stronger, he's going to be pushing these guys down. And, you know, it'll be the NHL, so he gets to throw a couple cross checks at them after too. It'll be great.
Yeah.
Some of the transition plays in Seattle are what kind of like caught me off guard. Like, he like one-handed shovel passes under pressure up straight for a controlled exit, like at the D zone, like plays like that. I'm like, whoa, okay, cool. Those are the things that, like, when I watched him in Czech, I was like, you look like you could do that. And then I saw him in Seattle. I was like, hey, you're doing that right away from like one of your first few games over here, because he hasn't been here that long. Like, how many games? Like less than 10, I imagine.
Yeah, I think it's like 6, 7, maybe.
Yeah, so
a handful, you know.
Yeah, a handful, right? Like, and I thought that was really impressive from him. And this is a draft where once you're outside that top 5, like, you're looking for things that really stand out. I feel like everyone's list from like 6 onwards is going to look completely different, but I'm looking for like who's high impact or has high impact potential regardless of play style. So you got like tiny 5'9", 170-pound Colin Potter centering in the NCAA and figuring it all out and looking pretty good, but like, you know there's a little bit more there, or maybe even quite a bit more there. And then the opposite side of the spectrum, you got like gigantic 6'6" Redeem Merca, they're so fundamentally the opposite, but at the same time, like, I see that same impact kind of from both of them. I don't know which one I'd lean. Probably Potter, but I like Merca a lot.
Yeah, Merca is a mystery box that I can definitely get behind. I think he's really interesting. I mean, he's a little bit lower for me, but not because I don't like him, right? Like, if I had like development coaches come up to me and they go, "We love the kid. He's working his tail off. You know, every ounce of intelligence we have is saying that he is, putting in the work. He's dedicated to getting better, and
Exactly.
I'm not saying I'm not saying he isn't, but like if I found out that that's the case, and it's like he grew a lot in the last few years, if that's the case, and like I would believe it all, and I think that he would be a very, very interesting project. Like I don't know if he's going to be an extraordinarily like impactful NHL player at the end of the day, but a very useful big boy who can chip in offensively here and there, especially in transition, moving the puck up the ice. And if he can sort of get a bit more of a physical game defensively, I think defensively his brain is often in the right place, right? And I think that's the hard thing to find with defensemen at this age, is guys who you watch them play and you're like, you know how to position yourself on the ice. You're not constantly thinking offense. You tie up sticks well in front of the net. Like he didn't look that out of place playing in the men's league in Czech. Like he wasn't amazing. The game I did of him there, he wasn't great, but that's a tough league. It's a tough physical league. And he was holding his own. His team got filled in with him on the ice, unfortunately, but he was fine. And I'm very curious to see him with Seattle. I haven't had the time and the chance yet, but from here on out, all the games I'll see of him are with Seattle. So I'm curious.
I would bump that one up the watch list. I'm curious because I had assumed you'd watch them in Seattle.
No. Okay. I mean, he's like, unfortunately, in terms of the cycle of guys, which is a phrase that I love now that I've said it. Because I have a cycle of guys, right? Like it's like if I usually space games out by a month. And so when I look at Mertka, like tracked games, I should say, I usually am watching video in between the dates, but I haven't seen Mertka yet, so probably should. But he's a late end of the month guy. So I've done 3 games of him all at the end of the month. It's the beginning of December, so I'm going to wait a little longer. But yes, he is one that I'm very, very curious about. You also were talking about Jackson Smith earlier.
Yeah, let's do this one. And what is he? What is he?
What is Jackson Smith is the $1 million question.
It's crazy because I see both sides of it. Like when I'm watching him, I'm like, okay, I could see why people think he's a top 10 guy. But my first like instinctual impression when I watched him, I'm talking like shifts, like just the first few shifts. I was like, huh? And then it happened. Like it just suddenly when he had a runway, he took off like a bullet. He went so fast, he forgot the puck behind him. It was actually quite funny. He just lost the puck under no pressure. But I was like, okay, well, that's not going to be a permanent thing. And like how fast he was going, I was like, oh, okay, let's go. He's got that in his game. He's also a wild card. Like I believe in the vision that other people see. Like you can see it immediately. The way he can sometimes escape into pressure, even when he's got like 2 guys swarming him, and he can like skate and handle his way out of it, going up ice with his head up, looking for a play. Seems like he's the type of guy who will want to skate it out there instead of pass it out. Nothing wrong with that. All right, do your thing, man. You beat 2 guys out, you could skate up all the ice all you want. Offensive zone, I don't really have a read. It was kind of a weird game. It not so much that he didn't really get to do much, but more so that like it was just heavy forechecking. So he was just kind of playing supporting roles. He didn't overactivate, which was nice because that would have been really bad. He looks like he wants to kill people every time he hits them. That's always fun. Every draft needs one of those guys in the top end. Like I sent you a message very shortly into my into my Jackson Smith game where I was like, is this the guy that we all wanted Andrew Strothman to be a few years ago? Because Andrew Strothman was a wild card. I loved watching him. He was super entertaining, always trying to make the flashiest play, very little assessment for risk and reward. It was all risk, all reward, baby. And some big hits were being thrown in the process. Just a super fun, like exciting player. But you've got this now cranked up to the dial of like top end player of the draft, which is just awesome. So I'm a fan. I just don't know what he is yet. I totally see him being better than Mertka. I'm not like committed to some Mertka over Smith take yet, but the Merca shows me, like, I got a pretty good read of the type of player that Merca wants to be right away. And there's a lot of safety in it. The skating is really nice. The control of the puck for his size is flawed, but like you could still see what he's trying to do. You can just assume that's going to get ahead. The defensive stick, as you said, like the defensive potential with this guy is pretty outrageous. And the fact that he can jump in, he's kind of like a little baby Dmitry Simashev. Maybe he's like, that's the type of guy he becomes. He's a really valuable player.
Yeah.
But Smith is a psychopath in the most complimentary way.
Yeah.
Like, just a crazy dynamic wild card. I saw a comment earlier, someone saying, like, we haven't talked about cowboy action on the
cowboy hockey.
Cowboy hockey. That is cowboy hockey dialed up to the extreme.
Yeah. I would agree. I think in my books, Jackson Smith, I mean, I'll tell you what I've said to, because I love Joel Henderson to death. And so many times I'll be chatting with him and we'll be talking about Jackson Smith, because you could talk about, us dorks can talk about Jackson Smith all day.
Oh, yeah.
And he'll just start talking about, well, I mean, there's this problem, but he does this, and there's nobody that does this, and I don't know about this, but then this, and blah, 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 blah. He'll talk, and then at the end, I do the same thing every time. I go, yeah, but I just like him. Like, I just like him. Like,
That's
it's not
enough.
good. It's admittedly bad analysis, for sure, but to me, he's like the total package of like what you want as a modern day defenseman to me. Obviously, I feel like a lot of the issues are kind of team based. Like, I feel like a lot of his breakout passes are missed or bounce over sticks or whatever, because there's just not a whole lot of finesse on Tri-City, or it's a lot of like,
I did notice
passing-
this. There's a lot
like
of
passing into the
structure.
neutral zone that are then tipped into the offensive zone, and then they forecheck to get the puck back, right? Like, there's a lot of that, which I don't think lends itself to Jackson Smith's style of play all that well. I thought he was great in London and Oshawa, especially in London. I mean, he's just a punishing defenseman as well, right? Like, he very rarely did I find him throwing hits or whatever in those games and going, yeah, but someone got in behind you and picked up the puck and they're in on a 2-on-1. Like, he picked his spots really well to throw the body down. He's a strong kid. And he skates, like you said, he skates like the wind when he really gets moving. And so I just feel like there's so much there to work with, that to me, I have him high on my list. I think that I would love to try to see what you get out of him. I don't know what he is in the NHL, honestly, but like I have Schaefer higher, obviously, but Jackson Smith, in terms of like a big, really mobile, rangy, skatey boy who can punish you, I mean, I like it. I like that package. I like the package of skills there a lot, right? I feel like that's a very desirable thing to have go on your roster.
Yeah.
Where do you want to go next? I mean, you're in the driver's seat with your mini samples here.
Well, let's do
Try
let's talk Roger McQueen.
Okay.
I find this to be a very interesting conversation.
Okay.
I saw McQueen the same year that I watched Misa and Haggins. I saw them all for the first time at the same event with many other players who are draft eligible right now. McQueen was an interesting player. You could, the big was there back then too. Decent shooter. Definitely has got a lot better. Skating was really awkward at first, but I had recently discovered he went through the growth spurt, and I was like, okay, that all makes sense. And I fast forward to today, and I gotta say, when the preliminary draft lists were coming out, just like the Sportsnet has, or the Bob McKenzie prelim list, and just kind of like just seeing the discussion. This is back in September, October, and I saw Roger McQueen in the top 10. I went, huh? Like, very, not in like a, I was just kind of in like a very confused way. I was like, what? Okay, what's changed? So I went and revisited Roger McQueen quite quickly. And he skates so much better now. His skating is it really is really fluid. Like I was really impressed with like the physical tools part of it, and I was like, okay, but he's not his playing ability hasn't really changed from when I saw him at 15, when he was just a guy at an event with a lot of the other draft eligibles, and he just kind of like, I think we at Puck Preps have kind of had McQueen bounce between like the 15 to 20, like low 20s spot for his draft year or for his age group. And that's always felt correct to me. Like the improvement, the floor and his current impact abilities reflected in the rank, but it was never like lower like some of the other guys were, who kind of are like big and just like make the small impact plays or something like that. I'm rambling. I'll get to the meat with this. McQueen is still not a play driver. He doesn't like, he has moments with the puck that are great, but I don't see him in tune leading the charge positionally with the puck on the ice, forcing play or like forcing defensive attention and then playing through it, adapting and handling to pressure and finding chances for other guys, being a star creator in transition. Those are all super important things to me. Now, if this was a different draft, I would be like, not really a guy I'm super interested in the top 10. But it's this draft, and it's a very there's a lot of different ways to go after 5, and I'm not entirely against the idea of him being in the top 10 yet, but it's what you said about Merca. I'd need like really good conversation with the development staff. If I got that, I'd be all on board with it, because there's little details to McQueen's game that have really sharpened out over the last couple of years, and they're really pleasant to see. Like when he is engaging physically, the way he kind of cuts guys off and angles them off at times and like lifts their stick to get the puck back, that's all really cool. You see that and you're like, ooh, that'll work in the NHL. And it wasn't something he had before, and it's probably not perfect now, but it's getting better, and I can buy into that. I know he started the season off with a big, what was it, like 4-goal game or something like that?
Yes. Yeah, that was it.
I think that I always get really concerned when players get their draft stock boosted right away. Like a semi-high-end prospect immediately becomes like a top 5, top 6 consideration off of like a singular game. And then he got injured. So we're not really in the best spot to truly figure out where he sits. So I'll be interested to see where he is, because I don't think he's like Caden Lindstrom last year, who I'll use as the WHL big body skill guy, because Caden Lindstrom was a beast.
Yep.
Like we saw Lindstrom dangle the pants off of like 3 guys simultaneously, using every bit of his reach, pivoting around. Like I've said the same example with him every time I bring him up, right? I don't really get that from McQueen, and I haven't really seen him, and I don't think that was ever his game. But Lindstrom was at the same game, playing in the same games that McQueen did back 2 years ago, and Lindstrom was doing these things because that's Caden Lindstrom's game. He just got way better at it, like way better. McQueen, that's just not who he is, and the player identities don't change this drastically. So he's someone where I'm like, I would be surprised if he's my type of guy for the top 10, but I can see him being worthy of a top 10 selection. Curious, like I don't even know what your thoughts are on him.
I mean, I've had a hard time with McQueen, to be perfectly honest. I mean, the thing that people have told me is like it's impossible to argue against, right? Of he will develop into something really impressive, right? Like he isn't there yet, but you give him, 3 or 4 years, grow into his frame a little more, get a little bit more skilled and refined with his puck control, and he'll get there. I can't disagree with that, right? Like he's in my second tier for the year, which is pretty large, but I mean, I feel like there are other players that have shown better now, and I will always lean into players that show better now, especially like if McQueen were born in September 2007, and he had, I would be way more charitable towards that. But considering he's almost eligible for last season, you know, if you had drafted him last year, top 6, like he's ranked now, and you see him play with Brandon the way he played this year, I didn't think the data that I've tracked on him is not very good. He was losing the control of the puck a lot. He's a physical player for sure. There's more of a physical edge to his game than I remember last year. It's just a question of like, what are you and what could he be? And I don't know, like, if it depends on what we're talking about, right? Are we talking about a top 5 pick? Because if that's what we're talking about, I don't know if I can get behind that. Top 10? Yeah, I think I could get behind that, but like, you're going to probably be saying no to a lot of players who I think are maybe a little bit riskier with regards to their size or maybe the pace of their game or something. But definitely, I think bring more now than McQueen does. But there is a lot to work with there. It's a tough call for me. And I think that's another one where you're going to need to do a lot of background, right?
Yep.
Like how bad is this injury, right? What's the development plan for him with Brandon? Because he's going to be there next year. That's the other thing too, right? Like how much of a step up from where he is now do you need to see next season in order to be comfortable with him in the AHL the year after that, right? Like I don't know, right? Especially after missing what is now 20 games of the season, basically a couple of months. We'll see where he is when he comes back. I don't know when that is. But he's weird. He's a different style of wild card to me, where it's like I guess I can't disagree when people tell me, well, it's not about what he is now, it's about what he could be. And you know, guys like him don't grow on trees, which true, you know, fair enough, right? It's just, is that what you're gonna go for that high, right? Like that high is, I mean, I guess in a draft where the vibes are a little negative, you know, I guess you could take a risk here and there. Sure. And I don't dislike him as a player at all. It's just, from what I've seen this year, I wasn't as behind him as high as he is. Like on average, he's ranked around 6th in my tracking. So yeah, like I don't know if I could do that. So it almost doesn't matter. Like I have him a little bit lower than that. And low enough where I look at it and I go, he's probably going to be gone before I take him anyway. So it kind of doesn't matter. But if he turns out to be a remarkable top 6 center in the NHL with a physical edge and a lot of skill, you know, then great, right? The only thing I think with him that I really am concerned about is when I watch him play, he plays like a guy who it's always come really easy to him. Like he plays like a guy who's been bigger, lankier than everyone else, a little bit more skilled than everyone else. He doesn't really need to jump into the play as much as he probably should. Other players will get him the puck a lot. You know, it's hard to explain, but he's a weird one. And
yes,
it's kind of, I don't know. And in a class of weird players, he's his own class of weird. But
well
yeah,
spoken.
I'm kind of leaving him where he is on my list, you know, trying to set aside the injury and all that stuff, and really honestly taking a look at the rest of the players around him. And I kind of go like, where does that risk come down for me? And we'll see when he comes back, right? Like you give him the charity of like, oh, he missed a bunch of time, he might not look amazing. And we'll see where it goes. But he's a tricky one.
It's all going to come back down to the main talking point of last year, almost, with Levchinov and a couple of those other guys who went super high in the draft, right? It's like this is always going to be a philosophical thing. We see the value, like I saw the value of Levchinov, and I see it with McQueen too, right? But it's like there's an identity that I'm trying to capture with a top draft pick. The higher the pick, the closer number one, the more I'm trying to capture that identity. I'm not trying to just take a square and shove it through a circle. McQueen is a great square, right? But I need a circle, you know, like that's just how it is. Like there's nothing, it's not a disrespect to the player. Like I see the strengths he has, and I'm not diminishing them. It's just like,
sure,
is that what you want to take a stand for? That's fine. Let's just, if you go with the approach of like, look what he could be in a few years, 5 drafts in a row, and then you just go for, look what this guy already is and still has room for improvement 5 drafts in a row. Over the long run, I have a very strong suspicion the good players who got better will outplay the one guy who became probably the best of the 10 players, 2 solid guys who were kind of what everyone thought, and then 2 guys who just didn't end up living close to expectations whatsoever. Right? Like, there's this approach to the draft. There's different approaches, nothing wrong with it. But McQueen kind of is this year's version of the one that I feel like our philosophy kind of differs away from. And there's ain't nothing wrong with it, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, our perception of risk is, I think, different than a lot of NHL people's definition of risk in the draft, right? Like, I think we see risk as this player doesn't show as much as others, and drafting a player that you need to see good development out of is a risk. But to them, they sort of go, right, but we had the development staff and we're confident.
Yeah, that always makes it.
And they see, and their idea of risk is like, well, what if this guy's not strong enough, right? Like, what if this guy's not blah enough? And with me, with McQueen, I mean, I it's hard to not use this phrase to describe him, but whenever I watch him, I come away going like, right, but you might be concerned about small guys and them being able to withstand physical pressure. But like a lot of the time with McQueen, I feel like it's like he's not really putting in enough of an effort to like make a real difference in a game, which sounds weird because he's a goal per game guy, but I found myself watching him and going, unless there was a point to be had or an offensive zone sort of thing, like if you could hit a guy along the goal line or you know, get involved deep in the offensive zone to try to score, I didn't really see much out of him. And I kind of went, oh, like, yeah, like to me, that's a version of risk in itself, right? Because you can't really get away with that in the NHL all that often. And I'm trying to think of a guy in the draft, though, in the last few years who kind of has that profile that we can sort of look back on and go, yeah, but he worked out, right? Like, oh yeah, it got there, right? And I don't think there are any, because 6'6" centers that have some skill and do that kind of thing, they're not very common. You know, like Slafkovsky is a big, physical, resilient dude, but I think there's a little bit more to chew on with Slafkovsky.
I think there's a fair chunk more to chew on with Slafkovsky.
You know,
but
so
like I'll give McQueen the full year before I stick by that statement with my guns out. But like already at this point of the year, we were pretty interested in Slafkovsky. Like he was really starting to build up the reputation at this point. And you were like, oh boy.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Good kid. Good player. Good player. So we got 5-6 more minutes before we get into the questions of the show. Again, if you're unfamiliar, you can drop some questions in the chat and we will get to them in the back half of the show. Anyone else you want to go over for the last 5 minutes here? If you want to aim for the stars, keep it boring, take it away.
Okay. Let's just fire off some points based on some of the guys I've seen. Cole Reshny is disgusting.
Nice.
Really happy watching him because I remember seeing bits and pieces of him puck preps, and he's really like, he's always been a good player, but he seems to just like put it all together and like really understand WHL. Maybe my sample before wasn't as high as it was. I was like couple question marks were on him. Then I watched him and I was like, oh boy, Victoria's been needing a good player for quite a while now. So, you know, good on Cole Reshny. I'm still trying to figure out Malcolm Spence. Like what he is and what he brings to a team, very clear. Doesn't take more than like a couple shifts to get that picture. The idea is like, what does he offer in the future with development? I don't know, because when I watched Spence a few years ago and I watch him today, he's the exact same player. Like you're talking about player identity that hasn't changed. Spence has like really not changed. Just got better at the exact same stuff. Little moments of skill when play kind of works his way. This is what actually a comment I was going to make with McQueen as well. Not so much applicable to Spence, so I guess it's more of a McQueen thing. But like when play happens to be in front of him, things go really well. Like when skill opportunities show up for Spence and there's space and everything just kind of happens that way, Spence will certainly look pretty cool. He'll start doing some cool stuff. But like creating those chances out of nothing is not really what he does, but he's really good at like meat and potato hockey. I like Malcolm Spence. Probably will be like a top half of the draft guy or like a mid first. Still trying to get a figure with him. Same goes for Caleb Desnoyers, but for different reasons. Like I don't think he makes like don't really have too much detraction to say, like nothing negative, but like I guess I was expecting more because I see him ranked pretty high, and then I look at him and I go, yeah, okay, cool. Like he's a good, like from what I understand, he did very, very well at the top prospect game against the NTD.
Pretty good. Yeah.
But like, I also understand that he was on a line with other dudes who can do the line driving work. If I'm taking you in a top 10, 15, you kind of need to be able to do that. I'm interested in his archetype, like those tertiary, sometimes secondary guys who make good decisions, like puck touch players. But I don't really see too much of a line driver. I might be wrong. Small, like we're talking a small sample with him. I told you, like every game I've downloaded from him off Insta has been corrupted. It's a curse. So I have been trying to get more eyes on him. I like LJ Mooney, but I like LJ Mooney of last year. I'm still trying to figure out the LJ Mooney of this year.
Right.
Again, that also applies to Anton Frundell, who I thought was going to be like the guy challenging for third overall this year. Logan Hensler has been, I was hoping for a bit more. Wisconsin tends to do this with defenders, so I don't really know what the read is on him. I'd like to revisit because Hensler was a bit more of like a impact player before. He seems mostly just like a guy making okay plays and doing the fine thing, but he's just duding all over the ice. Ivan Ryabkin, I don't know what he's subduing to warrant crazy high ranking other than like pre-established name value, but like that was a really disappointing watch. I did 2 of those ones just to make sure. Those were disappointing.
Yeah.
So
that's not controversial. It sucks. Like honestly, it's to the point where I almost feel bad. Like it's like
I agree.
You know,
like there's something about those ones that were different.
I remember seeing him last year, and I mean, we got questions before this season really got moving about him versus Demidov, and it was pretty obvious. It was pretty obvious to me. And I forget who else was on the show at the time we talked about it, but like Ryabkin I never felt like he was anywhere close to Demidov.
But he was interesting.
But he was a fascinatingly skilled, really sometimes he was just a brilliant, creative offensive player. But now, like he's playing slow. I think he's playing frustrated. You know, he's just kind of not. He's just kind of lost it a little bit. Like I think he just recently scored his first primary point at even strength in the Russian Junior League, like just recently, because I just updated my data and that number went from 0 to not 0. So I don't know when that happened, but it happened recently, and that's not a good thing because some of these guys are into the 15, 20, primary points when they're that good.
That isn't good. I don't count that as good. I was going to bring up one more player, but we actually have a question we'll get to where someone's asking me of my Luke Osborne. And while you mentioned that earlier, I said I don't have one. I lied. I do have one.
All right.
I think you've already figured out who it is, but like I do have one.
Maybe we have. Well, on that note, I guess we can get into the questions.
Mike.
What?
Your mic.
My mic? Why? I got to get a new microphone. This is driving me nuts. So anyway, we can get into the back half of the show. It is 9:00 p.m. officially Eastern Standard Time, which is the best time zone.
What?
Actually, yeah. How about that? What's your favorite time zone?
I know so little about actual time zones. Like I'll see the 3 letters and I'll be like, I don't know what you are, and I move on with my life and don't really think about it much.
Eastern time, baby. Eastern time.
I like
whatever time Rick Vive is having. Like whatever time zone he's in, that's my favorite.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, I'll ask him after the show. He's usually pretty quiet these days.
Should get my own portrait and hang him on the.
I think he's in Eastern time. I think that's where he is.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. I mean, I like that they've carved out a nice little half-hour time zone just for Newfoundland. I like that. That's very Canada to me. Like a special time zone just for this one island off the coast of North America. Kind of fun stuff. Anyway, we don't have to talk about time zones anymore. Let's get into the questions. Again, if you have any, pop them in the chat. We'll get to them before the end of the show. Sam, I mean, first question of the night from Evan. It is a question that I'm sure you'll be able to answer in extraordinary detail. Who do you guys have in mind for next year's top 5?
Oh, come on. I don't know. I think McKenna might go in the top 5. Is next year's Otto Stenberg's little brother, right?
Yep. Ivar.
Okay, he's cracked.
Yep, he's cracked.
He's cracked. Yes. That kid is okay, so that's 2. Why am I blanking? Now I have to open up a list.
How dare you?
When's Adam Valentini?
Wow, Sam, coming to the show unprepared. Or
Adam
unprepared.
Valentini. Adam Valentini is next year. Yes.
Valentini. I messaged Puck Prep scout Jordan Millette earlier because when I was watching a player who I will comment on later, Mr. Hidden Gem.
Yeah.
Not that hidden, but Valentini just wouldn't stop glittering in the background of their skate. I was like, man, the fine detail, the way this kid moves with the puck is insane. I adore watching him play. He's awesome.
Yeah, he is.
I'll let you.
Rascal.
You can find a couple other names, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a little bit more of next year's draft. I did just cover the U17s for Puck Preps, and I've obviously picked up on other guys in the year of work I've done to this point. That was weird. Sorry. That was odd. Anyway, I mean, Gavin McKenna to me is still number 1 on my list right now for next year. I think he's just, I still have a little bit of questions about his game translating, but he is an exceptional playmaker, exceptionally skilled, just such a great player. Ivar Stenberg is up there for me as well. I think he's just great. I thought he was the best player on Sweden at the Holinka tournament this year. I love Mathis Preston. That's a guy who I think Mathis Preston could be a guy who pops next season and really shows extremely well. Keaton Verhoff is another one. Like the WHL class next year is bonkers, right? Ryan Lynn is in there. Cooper Williams is a guy that I've liked as well out there. The Czech Republic has Adam Novotny coming. He's pretty darn good as well. But I guess for a top 5, I mean, the other one I want to mention is Xavier Villeneuve playing with Blainville-Boisbriand, who is like one of the most exciting defensemen I've seen in a long time. He's a point a game this year. He's almost eligible for this year's draft. And I know there's the joke like, oh, Quebec this, Quebec that, but I think he's been excellent, really dynamic, really mobile, really skilled, confident guy, like tons of fun to watch. But I've loved McKenna, Preston, Verhoff, Lynn, Stenberg, that group maybe in my 5,
Preston,
but I want to put Villeneuve in there as well because I think he's been great. But
I'll throw Preston in that one for sure.
And then what's going to happen is you're going to pull a Tony Ferrari and be like, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry I misled you. The queue still sucks.
It's Jover. We're done.
That's what happened, Sam. I don't know if you watched, but he's like saying there's actually some good players in the queue this year.
Yeah.
He was saying that in like the first stream he came on. A stream later, he's like, I retract this statement.
Yeah, that's it. That did happen.
Waiting on Will to do the same.
Yeah, I mean, we got to wait about 9 months for that, 10 months. So mark your calendars. Who has more upside, Connor Geekie or Matt Poitras? I would probably lean Geekie. I think Geekie. I've liked Geekie when he's played for Tampa this year. Like he's one of those guys where it's like from the moment you lay eyes on him, you kind of know what he's going to be, and he's going to be good at it, right? Like really good, solid third line guy, physical, got some skill. You can't really knock him off the puck super easily. He just does the job, right? It's just what he do. I am curious, actually, AJ. I don't know how much you've seen of Tampa this year, but that trade, Sergachev going to Utah.
I forgot about that trade.
Tampa got JJ Moser back and Connor Geekie. Geekie's in the NHL now. What I have seen of Utah, I've really liked Sergachev. I think he's been quite good there. But Moser, I believe, is like a really productive player for Tampa this year. And Geekie's been okay. Like, do you have any takes, if you want to get a word in this show, of like what that trade, like how that trade is broken down to you so far watching the NHL, or have you not seen enough?
I haven't seen enough of these guys in particular with these teams. Like, I haven't been fixated on them, but I always felt that, or at least in the past couple of years, that Sergachev was kind of out of place, other than the 1 year where I think Hedman was injured and he got the power play one time for Tampa and like really, really had a great season. So I drafted Sergachev last year going like, okay, so they're giving him the keys. They're giving him the keys, and they did not. And he got hurt too. So I felt like it was a good idea for them to move on because it was a pretty big contract. And I think it'll work better in Utah. They had Sean Dursey, though, but
yeah,
Sergachev is an upgrade in terms of being able to move the puck and run a power play. But I think Tampa's really needed defense, and Sergachev doesn't provide that he's just not that great defensively from what I've seen. So I feel like adding Moser and adding Geeky to a roster that lost a lot of picks because they traded for Tanner Jeannot, and he's now not on that team. They needed to replenish a bit and also replenish some of the cap space. I feel like it's worked out for both teams.
Yeah, I kind of come down similarly.
But I don't really have too many thoughts in terms of how they've played individually on the team. But like, I just felt that they made a lot of sense.
Right. Do you ever mix up Paul Cotter and Cullen Potter? No, but I will now. So thanks. That's gonna happen.
It'll be like 2 months from now, and you're gonna actually slip it up.
Paul Cotter, first overall, baby.
Yeah.
Go. Where's Paul Cotter now? Is he still in? Is he Vegas, Carolina?
No, he's on New Jersey.
Oh, he's in New Jersey.
Remember, he was the opening goal this season.
Right, he was. Yes, you're right.
Or at least he scored one of them in the first game. The global series.
Yeah. Mr. McFiggle says that I've betrayed him or her with shaving my mustache. I apologize. Hated it. They hated it at first, but now can't imagine me without it. Well, you don't have to imagine me without it because I don't have it anymore. So there's that. There it is. Luca Del Belbaluz is currently second in points in the AHL. Really?
What?
I didn't know that. Has your opinion of him changed, and how do you think he has shown growth in his game? So I will say this about Luca Del Belbaluz. First off, I have not seen him this season. I haven't really watched a ton of the AHL unless I'm watching it for this show with AJ or something before we cover a player or something. But Del Belbaluz was a player that I remember he was like, I liked him because he was big and skilled and really lanky. And I kind of, and I in isolated moments, I saw him do some ludicrous stuff with his skill level. And I kind of really, really liked him. And then when I would track data on him, it was like I see what you're capable of, but you never do it. And that kind of spooked me. But in retrospect, it's like, and I had people tell me, oh, his hockey sense is bad and his skating isn't very good and blah, 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 blah. And I kind of disagreed at the time, but I still wasn't in that phase of like, okay, people can say whatever they want, but I'm gonna do my thing. Whereas I'm there now, and with him, I liked him. In isolated moments, he was extremely impressive, more impressive than I thought that he would be going in. But just when I saw him in detail, I kind of went, I don't know. But I could always see him being skilled enough and big enough to score points. So yeah, I mean, I can't say I've seen him this year, so I can't really speak to any like growth in his game. But
I can
promising.
Add a little bit of context if you'd like.
Yes.
So, and this is complimentary, not detraction. So he's 20th in points per game, but the vast majority of players ahead of him, I didn't sort this by games played. A lot of players like 1, 2, 3, 4. So like 7 or 8 of those guys straight away are like less than 10 games played, whereas Del Belbaluz is at 23. So like,
oh, okay,
a great extent, and it's not like they're far ahead of him in point per game either. You've got a few guys like Brendan Hoffman have like 5 points in 3 games, and that technically is 1.67. But obviously, you're going to look at Del Belbaluz's season, and you're going to go like, okay, well, that's more impressive by a pretty, like, being able to play that many games in a row and, do well. Not to mention he's a year younger. Hoffman is 2021, right? Like, and who cares about a couple games played anyways? Most of the guys ahead of him are either like the Rocco Grimaldis, the Vinny Hinostrozas, the
Yeah.
Antonio Stranges of the world. In terms of like prospects with expectations and a large sample size, only Frank Nazar is higher than him. This is the
Right.
only one with 24 points in 20 games. And then this is a small sample size, but just shout out to Fyodor Svechkov, who is
in the
currently-
NHL now.
Yeah, he had 8 points in 7 games, which was 0.01 higher than Del Bell's in point per game. So I had no idea he was having such a terrific season, because even when you flip the script from total points to points per game, like once you add the context, it's extremely impressive still. Kudos to him. Wow.
And Nazar or Nazar, whatever they actually call him, because I never know. He's getting
Nazar.
Yeah,
he's getting a call up soon, apparently. Like it's
that makes sense. Yeah.
Chicago doesn't have enough like actual guys for that to not make
and this
sense.
is courtesy of Elliot Friedman, so it's not. I'm not quoting David Pagnotta. All right, this is Elliot Friedman. All right.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to have some fun with Connor Bedard, I don't know, maybe Nazar, give it a go. Who knows?
Ivan Demidov. Sorry.
boy.
Okay.
Oh,
Anyways,
boy.
we're gonna put
Anyway.
that.
You're just like the
We're
comment
that
section of the Levshinov video.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. By the way, also another player who's doing extremely well in the AHL this season that I did not expect is Antonio Stranges.
Yeah, he was
over
on.
a point, almost a point and a quarter a game, which is not what I expected out of him much. But you know, the skill level is amazing with him, and maybe that's what's carrying him. But I honestly haven't seen anything of Texas this season. Anyway, onwards and upwards. Thoughts on Kent Johnson and Marco Rossi's seasons?
Ken Johnson's on pace for a lot of points.
Yeah, I mean, Ken Johnson, I'm glad that it's working finally. I mean, granted, he's shooting 25% this year, I think. So I don't know if the goal scoring will hold up. And that's not really what I would consider as his like hallmark anyway. Like, he's a good goal scorer, but I don't think that's like what he's going to do in the NHL long term. But in terms of like setting plays up and jumping into the rush and, you know, simplifying his game in a positive way, I think he's come a long way from what I've seen when I see Columbus once in a while. I think I've seen him once or twice maybe this season, and he's been really good. So, I mean, the skill level was always there. The creativity was always there. Sam, I don't know if you've seen much of Columbus this year, but at least Ken Johnson, he's been quite
We
good.
know what Ken Johnson's hands are, though, right?
Yes.
Like, that's one of those players who had such a ridiculous skill level that, like, if there were struggles along the way, you were still kind of hoping for him to work through it. So it is nice. Like, that's the thing. Like, these players feel like they're ancient, right? But his 2021 draft, that he's like, what, 21? 22? His career's
22.
literally
Just turned 22.
starting. The expectations for his career should only be beginning, like, this year. And they're going quite well. So, like, kudos to Ken Johnson.
Yeah.
I'm a fan. I was a bit lower than him in his draft, but he's one of those players that when I look, well, granted, I think everyone looks at their 2021 list and goes, because like that was weird. But like, he's one of those ones where I look at him like, I like dudes who play like you, and I overthought you. I wish I didn't, and it's a lesson to kind of keep going forward, because I want him to be a thing. He was so fun to watch, man.
Yeah. On Marco Rossi, I will admit I am biased because I adore him. Like, he's on pace for 70 points this year. I know he's playing with Kirill Kaprizov and stuff, but like, he doesn't.
There's a reason he's on that line.
There's a reason he's on that line, right? Yeah,
like he's the guy. We've been waiting for this. He's the first. Yeah. He's a first line center who's only just breaking out now because he almost died. Like, I don't know how else to say it. Like, that's what. Like, this was the read on him a long time ago, and then he almost died, and he still is here. Not like 5 years later. The kid was.
Yep.
Don't even get me started.
4 years.
There's a Marco Rossi's fan club here, but
if there was ever a player I would never bet against, it's Marco Rossi. And I mean, I don't think there's been any serious talk about this, but people are talking about maybe him being traded still, but I don't see that happening. No, I would be stunned.
Stick through all of it just to trade him.
I don't think it's really going to happen. Like, I don't know why you like. He's if it's because you're like, well, he's not the number one center on this team if we want to contend. okay, but he
could still get better.
He could be my number 2.
Who else is?
Every single day. Yeah, and like who
and,
else is that you're going to go out and get that it doesn't cost him to get it? Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Can also like he absolutely can still get better. This is his first full season in like a top 6 role. He's just going to get better. Like, he's still a guy who's missing a lot of development time technically relative to the rest of the 2020 draft. But I mean, if you have a chance to trade him 1-for-1 for Jack Quinn, I feel like you got to do it.
Oh boy. Oh, Sam's coming with all the heat today.
I was waiting for that one for years.
Four seasons. I mean, he's played 4 full seasons basically ish. Like, so he's been around for a while, but
it's more so like the physical health wasn't there for parts of it. Like he wasn't who he was prior to everything falling apart the way that it did for him. It's like when we watched him, it was like I remember watching him afterwards and being like, man, the magic of that he brings is not there yet.
Right. Hudson with a new point streak record for a Habs rookie. There you go. That's fun.
Really? Why did I miss that?
With Beckett, Seneca, and Zane Parekh, is Canada now easily the best? Well, okay, let's pause for a second. They got to make the team first. But it doesn't hurt. They are, I mean, they're a medal favorite regardless of if those guys are on the team. I think Parekh gives them a huge boost. I think Seneca's a big boost as well. I know he scored that incredible goal earlier. Which is what he does, you know, like I've said multiple times that in terms of one-on-one individual skill, pure fun factor guy, he's right up at the top, and that's what he does sometimes, some crazy stuff like that. I mean, those guys definitely make Canada a lot better if they make the team. That American roster's pretty darn good. The Swedes are going to be pretty good, but I still feel like Canada is the group that's going to pull away here, especially if they end up with a Parekh on the roster.
Someone tells me it's the States.
We'll see. I mean, the States have the goaltending. They've got the goaltending.
They've also got the top line. Well, is Will Smith going?
He is not on the list right now, but they might. I don't know. Maybe they release him, but we'll see.
Okay, my opinion is based on that line coming back.
Only Will Smith coming back.
Well, the whole package.
Right. Okay, Sam, this is you. Who is your Luke Osborne of the year? Take it away. Enjoy.
Riker Lee is insane. I stand by this. It's not like it's a crazy hot take, though. Like, he's the leading USHL rookie point scorer. But take it back a couple of years. Riker Lee was a very, very small player for Shattuck St. Mary. This guy was like, gets the puck on his stick, takes over the shift type of player. It was just dominance watching him play. He was the most dynamic dude on a team full of some of the best players in that age group playing that level of play. Like, he was the guy. It was crazy watching him. He had some of the most insane highlight reels. Just a terrific, fun value package player. One of those guys, when I watched him, I was like, man, I wish you were taller. And today he's 6 feet tall and he's playing in Madison and he looks exquisite. And the craziest thing is you can kind of tell, or maybe it's the pace of play coming up. It's probably a combination of the factor, but Lee had good separation and agility before, and he still does, but the skating doesn't have that explosive separation like it used to, but he's a good skater. He grew a lot pretty quickly. The level of skill he still has with the puck, tremendous. The passing, tremendous. The shot and the quick release, fantastic stuff. I was watching a game and he just flipped in back-to-back shifts these saucer passes that led to breakaways over like 2 guys, and I'm like, how are you just touching the puck and doing it? I thought both were going to be icings. Land right on the stick, or at least completely just set up breakaway chances. And it's just beautiful watching this kid play. There's a draft where like we're missing high-end, exciting skill guys who have the ability to mix it with their fluid skating and turn off guys and handle pressure and manipulate sticks to get pucks through and come up with those like, wow, you really thought of that type of plays. We're missing guys like that. Reichley's got the bag. That bag is going to show itself more and more as the year goes on. I am all in on this one. Just because, like, I've seen him for years. Like, I'm familiar with Reichley. Like, I know what this kid is, and I never expected him to be 6 feet tall. Now it's like, oh, let's get some new context going on.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that I took a look at him in the last little while because I was impressed. I thought he was, I saw him early in the year. I thought he was a little bit, out of sorts, not really a super high pace guy with the puck on his stick. I think he's still trying to figure out that puck control, get things consistent there. But off the puck, the guy is a hound. Like, he just goes, and he was much more of an aggressive player than I expected. Really going after it. His defensive numbers in the game I tracked were really, really good. Still looking for him to get a little bit more involved offensively than he was, but still he's got the production. He's doing well. I mean, 5 points came in one game, but he's doing really well. And he's a guy who I didn't expect much of coming into the season, but I've been pleasantly surprised. So I'm with you there, I guess. Why isn't Matthew Schaefer the first overall pick on either of your lists? Where does he stack up compared to some of the defensemen taken in the last several drafts? I think he's one of the best.
Agreed.
Why? Like, my thing would be, why would he be first ahead of the rest, right? Like, I don't, like, the thing is, they're all really good players, right? Like, you could make the argument for him at first. Like, this is why I think of things in tiers. Like, if I am a team like, I don't know, who's a team that's drafted a lot of offense lately?
Montreal needs Matthew Schaefer.
Yeah, like, if I'm Montreal, Schaefer makes a lot of sense. But I mean, who knows if Montreal has the first overall pick? But in any case, like, in the last several drafts, I mean, he's definitely up there. I'm trying to think of the last one who was kind of like, oh my God, I'm super impressed with this guy. I mean, like, I loved Dmitry Simashev, but he's not Matthew Schaefer, right? Like, Simashev is just a completely different style of player that's really high end there. But for me, Schaefer, it's like, I think he's an excellent northbound player. Like, I think the details of his game are still a work in progress, but the fun and the fancy stuff is definitely there. The playmaking, the end-to-end rushes, he's confident. He goes to the net. He definitely does the thing really well. But I've seen, I have to do another game with him soon. He's, again, and he's like number 2 or 3 on my list probably by the next week, something like that. Like, again, it's not, I just don't think it's like far and away this like argument that he's there at 1. I think that it's a close group, considering who else is available. And for me, a lot of it is more off the puck with him and on the defensive side of the puck, where I'm kind of a little bit more questionable. But every one of those players in the top 4 or 5, 6 guys all have pretty big question marks in some areas. But if you want Schaefer first, I totally see why, right? Like, I get it. Is Porter Martone the safest pick in the top 5? I don't know.
I don't think so. I think that goes to Hagens most likely.
I mean, but again, it's like, what do you mean by safe, right? Safe to become what? Like, because I feel like the speed at which Martone plays the game is not where it needs to be the Matthew Tkachuk style offensive player in the NHL. But I don't think it means he can't get there. And I don't know. I look at him and I go, is he probably going to be an NHL player who is really, really good? I think so. I really hope so. But like, I would argue James Hagens is also pretty safe. Like, just how much of a puck wizard he is and how fast he can go and how much he can distribute to other players and all kinds of stuff. Like, he's active defensively. But, Martone is an exceptional player. Like, they're all really, really good. Like, I don't know. Sam, I don't know if you have anything to add or we move on.
You pretty much nailed it, but I'd just say, like, Martone, in my eyes, is kind of the riskiest of the top 5. Just because he brings the size with him doesn't necessarily guarantee safety. Like, it's, as you said, everything is like, how much does that pace come up? It's pretty much all I'll just add on to it. But like, I find it's like Misa's got the risk in the sense of like, what if the best parts of his game just kind of don't come through, and he ends up being like a puck touch complementary guy who can score goals. You're like, okay, well, that's a little bit disappointing. Hagens, it's really hard to see him like not being at least like a quality second line guy. Schaefer, a lot would need to go wrong for him to not at least be like a top 4 guy. But there is a world where Martone is not a top 6 forward. It's not a likely world, but like that's the one where you're like, eee.
Right. Have you seen much AHL this year? Any thoughts on Owen Beck? I have not seen Laval at all this year. It looks like his offense is more suitable for the program than it was for junior. So he is the leading scorer on the Laval Rocket this year. I have not seen Laval, so I can't really speak to that. But I could see how his game would translate offensively to the AHL at least. You know, safe, good, dependable puck moving guy up the middle of the ice. You know,
Yeah.
Doesn't bite off more than he can chew, just gets up the ice really efficiently. Again, really efficient hockey player. But
I'm looking at it, and it's not the best team. But that's not a detraction against Owen Beck. But like Joshua is like the only other guy where you're just like, who's a prospect where you're like, ooh. And Massar, before he got hurt, was a point per game player, but that's only 5 games. So
right. Apparently, Sam, you're looking handsome. Someone mentioned that, so there you go. Handsome. This is in regards to the Michael Misa thing. I feel like John Tavares is more individually skilled one-on-one than a lot of NHLers, especially than Michael Misa looks. I mean,
Misa's got a lot of skill.
Yeah, like
Misa's skill is pretty. That's not something I'd want to bet against.
I think the point that I was trying to make was that, like, that's just the kind of vibe of player he is. Like, he's not a burner. He's not, it means Misa's going to need to get stronger, I think. And I think that that's a given anyway. But the point I was trying to make was like, it's not, not directly comparing the two, but in terms of like a really, really good, maybe first line, really excellent second line puck touch guy who complements, plays with some faster players, plays with some, guys who can get him the puck, and he just finishes the job. He gets it into the offensive zone. He puts pucks on net from scoring areas. He doesn't waste his chances. He also can dish the puck really well. Like, the skill level, I mean, you also can build on skill level pretty easily, but I mean, I'm not going to count against a guy who's scoring both a goal and assist per game to this point in the season. Like, he's got points on almost half of Saginaw's goals this year, and Saginaw's not a bad team at all. Like, some of the raw data this year that you can access through a subscription on Scouching.ca at the partner level is ridiculous. Like, you've got multiple players scoring points on 40% or more of their team's offense, which is, in my work, like, unheard of. Like, I don't know if that's sustainable, but it is pretty crazy how common that is at the top end. Does that mean this draft class is really, really good? I don't think so. It doesn't guarantee it. I mean, it doesn't mean it isn't, but it's an interesting thing to note. And you've got Misa and Martone up near almost 50%. And I believe the highest I ever had was Bedard, and I think he was 65%, something like that, which
makes a lot of sense given who he was and the team he played for.
That's dumb. It's just dumb where he was. Anywho, comparing Schaefer to the best defenseman in the NHL is unfair if he's well, I mean, some people are comparing him to
that was the context to that conversation.
If he's Pietrangelo, that's probably worth number 1 or number 2. Yeah, that's why he's there. Does Hagens like, if he goes there, cool. Like, Pietrangelo is a top 10 pick, like top 5, yeah. Does Hagens remind you of any center in the league? Not really, but that's mostly because I feel like he's kind of James Hagens. Like, he's kind of his own. Like, is he like a Jack Hughes type guy, but a bit slower? Like Jack Hughes never played college hockey, right? Like, he went junior.
Hughes was so dynamic, though. Even Hagens, like Hughes is a little. I don't want to say a level above, but I kind of want to say a level above. It is not a slight to Hagens whatsoever.
Definitely faster.
Like the pace
like
that Hughes used his skill at was like, there's a reason why people were calling him like Patrick Kane at center in his draft.
Right.
And there's a reason why we're not hearing people call James Hagens that.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly will be like, I'll honestly say, like, James Hagens in the games I've seen this year, he's been very good, but he hasn't been a guy who's like looks like the best player in the draft. I still believe that he very well could be the best player in the draft, but I think it's just a really tough year.
It's close, man.
I think a lot of guys have really joined the party. They've developed and caught up. Not to say he's like not any good, but I mean, and he has kind of looked like he's settled in a little more in college hockey. But I think he's just got to get more experience, like in terms of managing the puck a little better, moving the puck at better times. You know, he's trying a lot of sort of these crazy between the legs dekes and stuff, and it's just not really going his way. And he probably doesn't need to do that stuff as much as he tries it when I've seen him with Boston College. But it's kind of weird. And like, I had this thought when I was watching Boston College before, because it was him with Perreault and Leonard. And it really didn't feel like they jived well as a unit. Like they all were kind of trying to do their own thing. Like Boston College on their own is on paper supposed to be a wagon. And they've been quite good. They've been very good. But those three guys, when I watched them the last couple of times, I'm kind of going like, everybody kind of wants the puck all the time and nobody wants to sort of move it very much. And they don't really ever establish offensive zone cycles and generate multiple chances that often. But on the rush, they're great. And like defensively, they can be very good, but they don't, for some reason, there's something there that just doesn't quite mix properly. And I'm not exactly sure what that is. I haven't seen enough, but I'm not discounting James Hagens at all. I'm very excited to see him at the World Juniors. I feel like that's going to be exciting. And we'll see. I don't know.
Bill Zonin skates like how I imagine Waluigi would skate in a Super Mario Ice hockey game because of this. I cannot put him into my second round. That is a 10 out of 10 comment that goes to 100 out of 10. It's like you were in a call I was in earlier with the amount of things you just pulled out of the Waluigi, the Bill Zonin. Like, what?
Yeah. I mean, I literally saw Bill Zonin this afternoon. I love Bill Zonin. I think the world of Bill Zonin. I think he to me, he has gotten so much better over the last year that I love him. I think he's so much fun. Like, I don't know if he's like a top 6 NHL forward in the future, but I mean, again, he's another player listed at left wing on my tracker here from Elite Prospects. But he's a center. In every game I've seen him, he's playing center. He is motoring up and down the ice. He is giving her. Like, I watched back-to-back Justin Carbonneau and Bill Zonin and had way more fun watching Bill Zonin, you know, as a even like a middle six guy who is physical and intense and pretty smart with the puck on his stick as well. You know, there hasn't been a ton of evidence of him doing much offensively at even strength in the games that I've seen, but I almost don't really care that much in the back half of the first round. I kind of just go, can you play hockey? And he goes. He's a really good, he is among the league. He's among the leaders in my track data of decent samples that I've got to this point of guys who generate turnovers in the offensive zone. He forechecks extremely well. He's got length. He's got size. He is fast. I mean, I get the skating stride is a little goofy, you know, like Waluigi. Yeah, I see where you're coming from with that. But I love him. I think he could be a real player. And if you can't take him in the second round and he's there in the third, I'll happily take him there. I think he's a great hockey player, tons of upside, and I don't know. I've been really impressed with him. I don't know if you've seen Bill Zonin yet in your adventures this year.
Me? No. But
yes, you.
I love him from pre-existing. Like, I actually went and found some of my old like game reports from those games 2 years ago and last year as well, where I've watched Zonin play, and I'm like, okay, so I was a fan. And I remember like there was a lot of guys who played at those tournaments, like Celebrini. That was the first time I saw Celebrini, Hagens, McQueen, Lynch, all of them. Zonin was one of like the 10 guys that I took away from as like, this was one of the guys out there for all the same reasons. He just went. He was but he was a bit more skillful in like a creator back then, which makes sense considering the age group and quality of competition. But this is how his game evolved makes complete sense. I'm super excited to jump back into where he's at, but I don't have much more to comment beyond that.
Ivar Stenberg versus Viggo Bjork are battling for Swedish supremacy in 2026. Who are you liking more, and what do you think of their games? I mean, I have Stenberg higher. I like Viggo Bjork. I think there's a lot to like there. I don't think enough of him where I'm thinking like he's an elite player for next year, but I just want to see where his game goes from here. Like, he's a very smart player, moves the puck really well. He's got some decent pace and decent legs in his game. I think he benefits greatly from having his brother around in Djurgården, who Wilson is having an extraordinary season there as well. Viggo, I liked him in terms of the smarts and the ability to manage and run a line himself, and I think he's having a very promising year this year. Stenberg has just been like
he is cracked.
He can just take over a shift. He's creative, he can score. I think there's a lot to like with Ivar Stenberg. I mean, I like Bjork a lot. I have him penciled in on my 2026 list here pretty high, and we'll see what happens. But I'm more curious about Bjork next year. I'm less certain, but I'm more curious about what he's like next season, because I think his game could go a number of different ways from here. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you provided Ivar Stenberg is cracked, which I think sums up how you feel about those two guys. Sam, what separates Misa from Hagens for you? Do you think Misa has the ability to drive a line at the NHL level?
I wouldn't call it separation, because like I could wake up tomorrow and go, okay, yeah, I ever so slightly lean Hagens, or maybe we throw Schaefer or Martoner in there, or maybe Eklund because I want to be crazy. What is always kind of with Misa, I have a deep appreciation for the vast variety of little skills that he brings to the table. This isn't to downplay like what he can do when he's just like flying with the puck. Like, guy is tremendously skilled in motion. Hagens beats him out with that little like small area, like phone booth style stick handling through traffic, and can come up with some pretty crazy passes that you're like, wow, no defense can stop that. But Misa shreds a defense by just like always making the right pass. Like, there's so many times where he's just in motion, and then suddenly, without much movement of his stick, the puck is just wired right onto a teammate's stick in space, and you're just like, wow, that was impressive. And then suddenly Misa's cut right back through behind another defender's heels, and he's slipped his check and is now ready to get the puck back. It's how some of his goals get scored, is just how good he works off puck and how quick. It's always like these just simple looking passes, but they're so effective. This isn't to say that the kid doesn't have the skill to create some pretty nutty passing lanes. This is where Hagens is just better. That's what makes James Hagens special. If that's your thing, first overall, that's fine. I got no issue with it. That might be my thing by the end of the year. But right now, I just lean to the way Misa's moving the puck up the ice. I think that is a line driver. It's not a line driver in the conventional sense when you first think of it. Like, we loved Brad Lambert before because Brad Lambert got the puck and went and distributed all over the place and did it well. But he can play that style of game really effectively, while also just being the glue guy who connects the dots. It's that synergy between the two that makes me go like, man, you can run a lot of lines. You can throw a bunch of different wingers with Michael Misa, and you can see how the results will come in, and how he can adapt, and how they can work off of his strengths, and how he can still take over moments in the game. Versus Hagens, like, Hagens stylistically isn't too far from Will Smith. I'm not going to call them comparables, but like, they're both highly skilled centers who really like crazy small area handling ability and fantastic vision and crazy risky plays at times. And you see what was legitimately one of the most ridiculous lines in junior hockey in recent history of Smith Leonard Perreault has been subbed out to Hagens Leonard Perreault, and the chemistry has fallen off. But two of the three players are the same. If anything, they're more experienced. I agree that it's not all on James Hagens here. Like, it's those two as well. Now that Smith is gone, it's like they've seemed to take some ownership in doing their own business driving the line. But I don't know. I feel like that is just an interesting thing to look at. I wouldn't draw some crazy conclusions from it, but it helps kind of the point I'm trying to make of Hagens isn't always going to make everyone around him better, but it's kind of hard to see how Misa doesn't, even though if it's not as dominant or primarily done through him holding the puck on his stick and doing crazy stuff.
Right on. Anton Frundell has been bouncing back and forth with injuries, 3 so far this year. Yeah, I believe it's been 3. Any recent games and strong opinions on him now? I don't have strong opinions on Frundell at this point, honestly.
I hope he gets healthy.
That's
my strong opinion.
Yeah, like, I mean, I always was a little bit skeptical of him last season, but you see moments. This year, you see moments with him that I've seen. I haven't seen any games like in the very, very near past, but the last game I saw of him, he wasn't really doing a whole lot, but he was better than the first time I saw him at Hockey Allsvenskan level. And he had some moments where you're like, yep, this is why you're seen as a very high level player. I feel like the pace of his game is a bit of a concern in general. But the skill level he's got when and the brain that he has in terms of his timing on things is just really good. He just seems to kind of get it. Like he's kind of like, if Michael Misa were gone, Anton Frundell was sort of cut from the similar cloth in a way, where it's like you don't notice him a whole lot, but when he contributes, he really, really contributes. I don't know. I don't know if you have any firm thoughts on him, but Frundell's been weird.
It's hard to have firm thoughts on a player going through the injury trouble that he's having.
Yeah.
Like I was a big fan of his D-1, similar concerns, but I was on the opposite. I was so optimistic with this all working out. I was like, man,
right.
I thought he was going to be the sleeper pick to come and steal first overall over
Right.
Misa and Hagens and I guess Martone and Schaefer. Like I was convinced, and then the injuries have started. Kind of hard to see this being the case by the end of the year, but I can't see. I don't have a concrete list right now, but I can't see me putting him outside the top 10, or if he is like past like 11 or 12 at most, and even that's starting to feel crazy. Just because like I'm a big believer. This is subject to change. Like if the injury stuff keeps up all year, other players have proven themselves, he becomes a bit more of a risk. It's risky to take him that high, but he is I'll summarize it by my strong opinion is I want him to be the type of player worthy of the risk. I hope we get to see that in the back half of the season, where even if it's still risky, he showed enough where you're like, but that reward is there. And like, you can believe in the brain and the timing, the skill, those high level moments.
Yeah. Does McQueen and McTavish have similar vibes? I don't think so.
McTavish was
he was a wrecking ball.
Like, he was insane,
and skilled, and he was bulldozing Swedish Pro League guys. I mean, I had him a little lower as well, but I mean, I feel like in the NHL, he kind of is what he is. He's not like a spectacular NHL player, but he's a very dependable one, and you know what you're getting with him. Yeah. He's an Anaheim Duck. Like, he's what the Anaheim Ducks clearly want. So good for him in that sense. But I think McQueen, relative to McTavish in his draft year, I haven't seen as much out of McQueen as I remember of McTavish. But I don't know. I feel like you would agree with that, and we can move on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is next year's draft looking stronger than this year's? Oh, I don't want to answer that right now. I mean,
I said this as a yes last year this time.
Right.
I'm not. I give up on this game. It doesn't matter until the draft year starts.
Yeah. I don't know. I like it. I like it to this point, but you know.
You're also not noticing the players who are very mid, like you notice when you actually start doing this work.
Yeah.
And at least 3 of the high high names are gonna just disappoint right out the gate.
Yeah, for sure. There's a few
we don't know who, but they're there.
Yeah.
There will also be guys that will just show up and you'll be like, wow,
exactly.
I love them.
Yeah.
I love them.
You just hope the equilibrium works out to a good draft.
Pearson Bowie, that's my guy for next year. Pearson Bowie is the guy that I'll have my eye on next year.
I remember when I loved Andre Molnar and then he sucked.
Yes. He's still in the OHL. He's still kicking around in the OHL.
He was so good. I got Will to put him
one time.
Yeah, one time. I got Will to put him.
It was one good game.
Oh, but it was awesome. It was awesome.
He was awesome.
And I saw him at the Hlinka the year before. And I love this guy. I love this guy. So 2 games he had me fooled.
Yeah. We had a couple of comments saying that Pacific Standard Time is the best because you can watch every NHL game. That is a very good point. I didn't think of that, but
Good argument.
Yes, that is a very good argument.
I still watch it.
Nerds.
I mean, personally, I'm a night person, so I can watch 10 p.m. games every so often. But I'm and I would feel weird if like my hometown team played at. Oh no, I guess they would play at 7 every night, and you see games from before at 4. Anyway, we're getting off track here, but I think that is the right answer. The Pacific Standard Time for a hockey fan is the best. Sam, do you have any thoughts on Fabian Lysell?
Be better.
Oh,
I mean, I love the guy. Like, I still do. I obviously was a bit too high. I was a bit too high on him. I'll say just like I said about Ken Johnson earlier, this was a year where you can finally start to like see if your expectations for these players is fully fair. It's still not 100%. It's not like I'm writing them off or something, but like this point, I was expecting a bit more. I don't know fully what's going on there. I will say the last time I watched him last year in the AHL, though, he was really good.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really expecting him to have like a significant improvement in his role.
Yes.
I don't know what's going on there. But
what's going on is they hate him.
They suck.
That team sucks, man. He's been playing with the biggest losers ever, it feels like, in the AHL. And the one time he got put with Matt Poitras and Max Jones, he scored like 2 points.
Yep.
He's a very good player who is not going to benefit by playing lower pace hockey. Like, and he's the type who could play third line or fourth line.
He is, but their
it's weird. It's weird.
But their expectation is he is an offensive player who's going to score points. He's not doing that, so
they're gonna trade him for Radko Gudas.
No, they're not. You think Anaheim would ever
blossom soon?
No, they're not trading Radko Gudas.
Yeah, they're not trading their captain, man.
No, I mean that's because there's an Anaheim Ducks game going on. I mean, maybe they'll trade him for Arbor Xhekaj or something. And
again, too high. The value, the other teams would perceive him way higher. He's going to get traded for a 4th round pick.
Yeah, 4th round pick. Yeah, you're probably right. Could Ryabkin be 2025's Aatu Ratu? No, because
Ratu had high standards.
Ratu was just overhyped, but he was and still is a solid player. Ryabkin has been bad. Like whenever I watch Ryabkin this year, I'm going, I don't know if I would draft you. Like it's not great. And it's unfortunate, right? Because like you see moments there and you see it last year and whatever. It's just like, I don't know. And his head coach went public with some weirdness that's going on there. Yeah. There's the whole USHL thing of like, will he or won't he go? I don't know. It's just like Ratu didn't have that problem. I think it was just people overcorrecting on what the expectation was on him. But yeah, I feel like with Ryabkin, it's more like what people thought Aatu Ratu maybe was. I don't know, but yeah, I don't see it as the same. Which pro hockey league besides the NHL and AHL is the most fun for you guys to watch hockey in?
SHL.
Swiss League. Nope, Swiss National League. Easy. Swiss National League. That's my answer. I mean, SHL is there too. Like I'd say those two are the best, but I enjoy the National League a lot.
Fair enough.
And Switzerland is cool. Switzerland is a very beautiful place, and I'd love to play there.
Will just likes being an off-the-board kind of person when it comes to answering questions.
No, we like fun on this show, and the National League is way more fun than the Swiss League.
The VHL.
Yeah, Russian minor league.
Liga, the most fun league ever.
I'm a fan of the League Magnus, the French league. That's always a good time.
Yes, but has Fabian Lysell ever played in the National League? No, therefore not better.
In 2 years he will after Boston
Fair enough.
As a free agent with,
he walked into that one.
I did, but you know what? Good setup. And
he's going to score 80 points. He'll go to the National League, score 80 points, and everyone will go, great, but you couldn't make it work in North America.
No, he'll be Dennis Mulligan. That's what he'll be.
Yeah, he'll be Dennis Mulligan, exactly. Ryan Rubrick, ?
I also have question marks.
Yeah, he's fine. I don't know what I think of him yet, but I mean, I've seen Niagara a couple of times, and he's big and he can shoot, and I feel like as a finisher, he's pretty good. I don't know what else to think about him. Any D+1 thoughts on Ben Danford? he is Ben Danford. He is a solid defensive player who has some skatey moments. I think he's just a very limited projection, but he's not bad. He's fine.
Well, apparently he's my favorite player, according to Tony Ferrari, who told that to Simon Wang when we did the game tape interview. That was hilarious. Yeah. I mean, he didn't say it like that, but he's like, hey, AJ's a big fan of Ben Danford. Ben Danford's just fine. But it was just really funny to see Tony be like, I know how much you love him, AJ. Right? A guy who plays with him. His face.
One game. Played with him for one game.
Yep.
Sam, have you gotten to Jake O'Brien yet?
Not enough to. We can revisit this one.
Yeah, we can revisit that later.
I don't have a fair take.
Cool. Yeah.
Any thoughts on Tamerlan Abdrashitov?
Is that a real player?
It is a real player. You know what?
I got no thoughts.
This is going to sound ridiculous, but I remember writing this guy's name down because he has 0 points this year. He had 2 points last year in the Russian Junior League. He doesn't score, but I thought he was a fun guy. I thought he was kind of neat, so I've been meaning to circle back, and that's a good reminder for me to do that. So I'll add him to my watch list because I believe it or not, you can choose to not believe me, but I have seen this player play, and I remember enjoying it and going, oh, but what is he? Anyway.
Why wouldn't we believe you?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I am the guy who keeps tabs on Lakvadurj Jarvanayam from Mongolia.
Yeah, so of course I believe you.
My hero, Yasserbek, what's his name? Oh God. Yeah, I can't believe I've forgotten his name. No. Yasserbek Rustamkhonov, that's his name. That's the guy.
Too late.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry, Yasserbek, if you're watching the show. Elite Prospects says that Jakub East Wozniak is a potential first rounder with a good power forward potential for the NHL. Agree or disagree? I disagree. I will not have East Wozniak even ranked personally.
I saw him and was like, "That's a dude," and just I had zero lasting impression.
Like, if you want to pick him,
I'll revisit.
Fine. I did not see it with him at all. I feel like he's just bigger than most of his competition, and he does, like, I don't know. I just haven't seen it with him. Didn't Seneca score that highlight reel goal against Sam Dickinson? Yes, he did. Poor Sam Dickinson. Pour one out for Sammy.
As someone who was like probably too low on Seneca and high on Sam Dickinson, that one hurt to watch.
Yeah, but
it's predictable. Don't get me wrong. It's not like it wasn't predictable, but it was just like a double whammy of pain.
But again, like, that's the area where Seneca is strongest, and in my view, that's the area where
Sam Dickinson is weakest. Yeah,
it's like you're kind of crisscrossing, right? I bet if Sam Dickinson wheeled up from below the goal line and went for a skate, and Seneca was in front of the net, I mean, Seneca's not a defenseman, so fair enough. But
he would chew him.
He would have fun. Where are you two at with that Luke Vluswick kid? I have not seen this kid before. I've been meaning to check him out because
I'll put him on a list just because his name is cool.
He's a big 6'4" defenseman, 200 pounds, playing for Red Deer with 4 points this year.
That's the barometer.
I haven't seen him. Yeah, we'll put him on the list. He's on the list there, so you can come back and we'll cover him later. Does Martone remind you in terms of offensive play style of Sam Bennett? It's an interesting question, but I feel like it's hard to. It's probably a no, because Sam Bennett at Porter Martone's age was seen as like a soft skill guy who, like, they were making fun of him because he couldn't do a chin up at the combine, right? Like, that was where he was at. Whereas I feel like Porter Martone is just like a physical freak. Like, he's strong and like an athlete. Like, I feel, not that Sam Bennett is not an athlete.
No,
but
he's not.
But you know what I mean? Martone,
yeah, you just
Sam said that.
Every playoff.
Yeah,
I speak for all Sams.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
No, I mean, I don't really know exactly who Martone really reminds me of off the top of my head. I'm sure we've had some decent examples in previous shows, but he's a good player. But I don't know if he would remind me of Sam Bennett, especially at the same age. What am I missing with Brady Martin that has some people looking at him like the top half of the first round? Brother, I'm with you.
You aren't missing it.
You aren't alone.
We're just, this has to be a name pedigree thing, because when I finally got around to Brady Martin and I watched him a bit, and I had seen him before and wasn't too impressed, and the puck prep stuff, his name's been around. And yeah, he hits. He plays in Sault Ste. Marie. I feel like he just checks off all your typical like Hockey Canada boxes, and some people,
All
if they're
things
checking those
Sam
boxes,
hates.
that makes sense.
Plays in
Right.
Sault Ste.
Like,
Marie.
I'm going there in 2 days.
Oh, you love it there, don't
Yeah.
you?
Thank you for my job. Anyways,
but yeah, I mean, with Brady Martin, for me, it's like I've seen him a bunch because I want to make sure that where I have him ranked is where I want to put that out there next week, and I am fine with it. He's not in my first round.
I don't think he'll be in mine.
I see him as a complementary physical guy. I don't know if I'd put him at center. I think that seeing him in the top prospects challenge was very interesting because he was playing with players much better than him, and he could just play that physical role, go to the net, be a wrecking ball, do that, do this, do that. But I look at other players in this draft who I think do similar things, but with more interesting NHL projectability. But like with Brady Martin, for me, it's another one where it's like he'll be drafted well before I would take him anyways. So that's kind of where I come down on him.
The way I see it, is like, would you trade a top 15 pick for a guy who brings what Brady Martin brings to a game?
Probably
the answer
not.
is like no. And if you did, your fan base would hate you, and everybody would be mad at you. But suddenly, because he's a prospect, it's like, oh wait, this is valuable. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense.
I mean, he has the I don't know. It's this is why I do so much work like around the whole world, because like there's a lot of talk about him, right? There's a natural focus on these types of guys. Ontario, farm boy, good story, physical, scoring decently, blah blah blah. Like he's gonna get every opportunity to go pretty high. I just don't see it with him personally. Not at the level that other people do. I know you've broken down film recently for a few London players. What have you thought of Denver Barkey in those sessions? I love Denver Barkey. The thing with him is he is a lot of fun, very skilled. I feel like he still has some sort of puck management problems, like just being more like he's a very individual player. Like I know he's a good scorer, he's a good playmaker, he does all the offensive things really well, but I think he kind of takes on a little bit too much on his own. I think Easton Cowan kind of is the perfect match for a player like Barkey, but I mean, Philadelphia Flyers fans are probably going to adore Denver Barkey. Like I wouldn't be surprised if he's an NHL player at some point because he is fast, he's aggressive, he's a dirty little rat. And he's skilled and he can score, he can set up a play. Like he does a lot of things at a really high level. I think he overcomes his size disadvantage pretty well. And I think he brings enough to the table where even a guy like John Tortorella is going to be like, yep, this guy does what I need him to do. He's a competitor. He's a pain in the butt to play against. And like I said, dirty little rat, but still a pretty good hockey player.
Only player I have ever given the Brendan Gallagher comparison to. That's
right.
all I have
and
to say.
Honestly,
I'm
a
Habs fan.
I see a bit of that there too.
I don't say that lately.
Oh yes, I do realize that me saying that Switzerland is very beautiful implies that it's not as beautiful in Sweden. I'm sorry, but it isn't.
It'd be pretty if there was like one less Mikkel Holm there.
Well, actually, I should rephrase. I didn't say it's. I didn't mean it's not beautiful in Sweden, but I feel like Switzerland is like a fairy tale world, and Sweden is more like a different kind of fairy tale world where everything is flat. There are little gnomes running around all over the place. The air is sparkly. Like I feel like Switzerland is like the elf world in Middle Earth, whatever it's called, and Sweden is more like Gondor, like open area, forests. It's very beautiful in its own way, but I go with the elf, whatever it's called. What's the place called? Where do all the elves?
Where do elves live?
In
just type that in and watch Switzerland pop up.
It's not just it's giving me like a bunch of places. Like, Valinor, the land of the Valar
areas. Like I've played a bit of Dungeons and Dragons.
Rivendell. That's what I'm thinking of. Rivendell is what I'm thinking of. Yeah, Switzerland is Rivendell.
Sweden is Anton Frondel. Good night, everybody.
Hey, Okay. Define skatey moments. Yeah. So I guess in that sense, I mean like, and I think that was in reference to Ben Danford. Like I just mean like Ben Danford can get the puck on his stick, get some speed going through the defensive zone and rush it into the neutral zone pretty well and fend off some pressure. Like that's what I mean. Like he just it doesn't happen very often, but when he gets a bit of freedom and a bit of space to play around with, he can kind of get moving decently well. But I still feel like Danford projects as a pretty solid defensive defenseman in the NHL that you just like to have on your team. Sam, we have come to the end of the show. Do you have anything to plug or any parting words or anything before we let you go and watch more of these glorious hockey players form a glorious draft of 2025?
No, I don't have too much to say because this was my return to the public hockey world. I have a lot of work to do before I get to start plugging stuff. I'm not making anything coming out soon. And I'd say follow me on Twitter, but honestly, I haven't been using it. So
nothing.
It's a slow grind here, baby,
Nice.
but it pays off in value.
Yeah.
In 6 weeks, when I'm fully back into this thing, then it's over for everybody else.
The game is over.
Then it's
all
over.
right. Well, then I guess we can let you get out of here. Again, we're brought to you by Fanatics. You can use our link in the description or scan the QR code in the video window. We'll get a kickback on anything you buy in the store. We're also brought to you by Puck Preps Hockey, where Sam and I both perform some duties. I mean, I am more there now, but Sam will come back soon, I'm sure.
Sam's coming back.
Look forward to some World Junior A Challenge. We didn't get to that today, but the World Junior A Challenge got started today. The USA pounded the snot out of the East Canadian team, but that was not unexpected. So all your NCAA and CHL prospect needs, which are, as time goes on, blending more and more every day, you can check them out over at puckpreps.com. Fractal Hockey Consulting, which is my business for hand-tracked targeted player analysis and recruitment packages for the NCAA Europe and beyond. And of course, Scouching.ca, which is obviously the site that is hosting this stream. You can subscribe to Scouching.ca and access tons of cool perks like our Discord server, exclusive prospect data, tons of insights into my track data behind Fractal Hockey, as well as written content that only subscribers get. You'll get my rankings at the end of the week, as long as you promise to keep them secret from Tony Ferrari until Monday afternoon or Monday evening, whenever the heck that is happening. And and also we have a merch shop. You can either send us $1 million on buymeacoffee.com or go to Scoucher.com and buy a million stickers.
Buy a billion coffees now. We've
right, a billion.
Sorry,
I forgot. 1 billion coffees. Yeah, 1 million is nothing nowadays. We need 1 billion coffees. We need to be.
You hear that, Mark Cuban?
We need to be under threat from internet vigilantes. That's what we want. We want to be under threat from vigilante guys named Luigi. That's our goal in life. Be one of those. Anyway, thank you, Sam. Thank you for joining us. It's lovely to see you.
Thank you for having me. And I'm happy to be back.
It's very nice to see you. And AJ, once again, thank you very much. And we'll see you all on Thursday afternoon.
Yep. You didn't even give me an intro of this show, but
nope.
It's fine.
Sit down and shut up today, I guess.
Yeah.
The job is.
Anyways, Leafs for Cup, doesn't matter. 2 losses, but they were BS, ref bias.
Oh.
It is what it is. Go Leafs, go. Plan the parade. Good night, everybody. Habs suck, by the way, Sam.